Vladimir Putin is Russia's naked emperor as a result of the Wagner mutiny. Few in Russia opposed Putin in the face of Prigozhin's desire to create chaos. During the transition period, while some leaders expressed their confidence in Putin, his actions became more popular, citing fearlessness of the Russian government. Ordinary Russians also show great indifference, even some confusion. The revolt of the Wagnerian mercenaries of the catering company Yevgeny Prigozhin ended on Saturday, before it could actually begin. Prigozhin agreed to surrender by Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko, who agreed to allow him to relocate to his country, including some of his warring forces. But the result of their escape began to resonate only in Moscow and on the battlefields of the Russo-Ukrainian War. Although Vladimir Putin, mostly anonymously, declared Prigozhin a traitor in a 5-minute radio speech in which he delivered Prigozhin to the country, Prigozhin, newly marched, met with little opposition. Over the Rostov and Voronezh regions, the attackers shot down several military planes trying to track down or attack their ships, including the Kov-52, a dangerous machine that led the attack in the Ukrainian country. They passed through the Lipetsk region and the city authorities ordered a march to stop them, but it was too late. They reached the Oka River in the Moscow region, 200 kilometers from the city. Sandbags were placed at checkpoints and barriers close to the city, which were monitored by juvenile police and petty police. Meanwhile, Chechen soldiers claiming to be loyal to Putin and ordering the fight against the Rostov uprising did not appear. All of a sudden it's over. To avoid bloodshed, Prigozhin used standard means of communication, recorded in telegram, to announce that he had finished his march in Moscow and took his opponents to the camp. Soon after, Putin's spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, announced that Lukashenko was negotiating a solution to Putin's request. Prigozhin would be protected from prosecution and relocated to Belarus. Some of Wagner's killers would be contracted with the Ministry of Defense. In Lipetsk, workers began to collect their digging in the streets. In Moscow, the mayor decided not to stop on Monday, announcing to Muscovites that it is still expected to burn. Lukashenko's main goal may still be wrong. Putin prefers to go after those he sees as traitors, and Belarus is increasingly seen as part of Russia, so it is not a safe haven for Prigozhin. It is not yet clear what will happen in all places such as Syria, the Central African Republic, Sudan and Libya, where Wagner illegally represents Russia's illicit interests. However, the significance of the conflict goes far beyond its direct consequences or the fate of Wagner and its creator, Prigozhin. Russia has never been a good place. On Saturday, Prigozhin did what many stowaways did before him. During the reign of Catherine the Great, a Cossack named Yemelian Pugachev proclaimed himself king and took some castles in the Urals before the bulk of the army stopped him. During the Russian Civil War after the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution, the anarchist warlord Nestor Makhno led a successful expedition against the remnants of the Russian army and the main forces of the Bolshevik-led Red Army. Even two of these upstarts can't count on long-term success, but for them it's enough to be king for a day and indulge rather than obey a rule. While Wagner, with his thousands of experienced fighters, could seize some important buildings in Moscow, and perhaps even Prigozhin's rival, Minister Sergei Shoigu, and the Chief of Staff, led by Valery Gerasimov, the hanging Chief of Staff, they cannot expect to lead management of one of the largest cities in Europe. While Wagner promoted faith in Ukraine's toughest city battles, he lacked the strength to succeed in the struggle, and Prigozhin, with his unwavering voice and ferocity, was none other than the past. There is political or prestige to get the job. But suicide may be a viable strategy in Russia's mind. The coward stirs up the bureaucratic machine and wins the respect of the people. In Rostov, the crowd cheered as Prigozhin left the city in a black SUV. Early in Putin's presidency, Kadyrov personally supported Chechnya's current leader, Ramzan Kadyrov, despite having previously fought the Russian army in a war that the Chechen separatists could not win. According to Kadyrov, it is enough to throw himself on the side of Russia. For this, he considers Chechnya almost a private sphere, and Russian policy has little influence in the region. It seems that fighting a war of indecision that causes destruction at all costs can still be a strong negotiating position. This is not the first time Putin has acknowledged this, but at a critical moment he shows weakness. Few in Russia defended Prigozhin against his desire to ease the crisis. Although the army is still fighting in Ukraine, the Russian army is still ordered to fight from the Rostov headquarters. Wagner warplanes are watching the building, but there are no mercenaries playing for Shoigu and Gerasimov, and Putin stubbornly holds them without him. Suffer from invasion. Although some officials expressed their confidence in Putin during the transition period, its actions were explained by emphasizing that the Russian government was devoid of fear. Ordinary Russians also show simple indifference, even a little confusion. When Prigozhin announced his march for justice, he openly questioned Russia's desire to attack Ukraine, but no one wanted to attack. Russia is fighting an unjust war because of inertia, because many Russians cannot afford to lose. The lack of public anger at the protests when the enemy attacked is irrefutable proof that the heart of the nation is not tied to the fratricidal Ukrainian intervention. It also shows how fed up Russia is with Putin. Although Prigozhin did not win, his anarchist policy of insurrection showed the weakness of the government to those who wanted to profit from it. The king is naked. Sooner or later, even through resistance or repulsion, other people decide to try on her outfits again. Vladimir Putin faced military protection this weekend when the head of the Wagner Group mercenary group called for "just walk" against the Russian army that allegedly killed his men. Wagner director Yevgeny Prigozhin captured a military base in the south of the country on Saturday, and prepared to bring Russian personnel to Moscow before facing Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko, who was to dismiss Prigozhin. While a bloody offensive outside the city between Wagner's army and the Russian army is avoided, we still have many questions. This is what we know about the Wagner revolt. What happened at night? On Saturday, the Wagner Group took control of all military bases in the southern Russian city of Rostov-on-Don and reportedly in the city of Voronezh, about 500 kilometers south of Moscow. Secretary commanding the Southern Military District headquarters in Rostov-on-Don, Prigozhin demanded that Russian Prime Minister Sergei Shoigu and Chief of Police Valery Gerasimov be sent to him, otherwise he would take his troops. Moscow.